As audiences go, it doesn't get much bigger than the United Nations. But when UBC professor Robert Krell stood before the General Assembly last week to deliver a keynote address, his nervousness was tempered by his topic. Krell was invited by the UN to talk about child victims of the Holocaust. It is a subject that he knows well because he lived it. Marissa Thomas has his story.
When Vancouverite Dr. Robert Krell walked to the podium at the United Nations in New York, he gave the keynote address in late January for International Holocaust Remembrance Day.
We heard stories no child should ever hear.
He is a child survivor, a title few will ever have and carries a burden few would ever want.
As a result of our experiences, we had grown up too quickly, too seriously. We had become elderly children.
The UN called him this fall and he accepted immediately. The speech was written in a day, but the fretting lasted months.
It's an honor to be asked. But like I say, it's an awesome responsibility because I was aware, of course, that when you're chosen to do that, you're speaking in behalf not only of the few child survivors who remain, but the 1.5 million children who were lost. My grandfather, grandmother.
Most of Krell's family was killed in the Holocaust.
Local Poles found them and beat them to death with axes.
He survived after a Dutch family took him in and hid him for almost 3 years.
These are my rescuing angels.
His parents also went into hiding, and when the war ended, they were reunited with a son who no longer remembered them.
And so when I was returned to them, I protested.
The adjustment was made easier as the two sets of parents helped raise him. For years, he rarely talked about the trauma of being a child survivor. He moved to Canada and graduated from UBC Medical School as a psychiatrist. And not long after, he recognized the need to document stories of survivors.
So in the late 70s, well before Spielberg, I began to tape audiovisual testimonies of the older survivors.
From there, he began traveling the world giving speeches. He wrote books and brought together other child survivors and eventually co-founded the Vancouver Holocaust Education Center.
The center was established in 1994 so that we could bring students here to learn. These are experiences that tie into everyone who comes here.
It was after all of those accomplishments that Krell finally landed here at the United Nations, his biggest forum yet.
I'm just astonished by how many of our friends who've never really paid too much attention to my activities suddenly have.
Because you've been at the United...
Because I was at the UN.
He brought people together. He's a teacher, he's a healer, and he's a physician. That was his first-time job. His second job was getting people to talk and open up about their experiences so that we never forget.
So with his family watching, Krell delivered a message heard around the world.
You have chosen to keep hopes and dreams alive for our people, as well as your children and grandchildren. For surely we have learned that hatred directed towards the Jewish people never stops with Jews.